One of the most interesting things I think I've been involved in recent times is a really unusual study of the English riots of 2011. In the immediate aftermath, I was telephoned by a journalist from The Guardian, who I think was telephoning several academics. And he wanted to know whether there was any possibility whether we might be interested in setting up a study of the riots in partnership with The Guardian newspaper. They'd been involved very much at the forefront of reporting the riots, and they'd collected a huge amount of data, and they were thinking about doing something bigger, but they recognised, I think, that it might be helpful to have a university on board. And so they phoned around, they phoned me. I was probably the first person who said yes. And so we met, Paul Lewis from The Guardian and I, and talked about a study, and within about a week had decided to press ahead. Went straight into the first decision we really made was that if we were going to do something that had any real value and had any impact, we had to do it really quickly. So it wasn't going to make sense, it wasn't really going to work if we did the usual social science thing of take 3 months to think about it, another 3 months to plan it, another 3 months to raise the money, and then a year, 15 months to do the study, and then another 9 months to write it up. Everyone would have forgotten about the riots, or at least the political conversation would move on. So we wanted to move really quickly, and we then set about, I think, a unique study. So in the first phase of the study called Reading the Riots, we raised research funding, we launched the project and advertised for staff. We shortlisted and then interviewed and then recruited 30 interviewers or so. We designed the study, we trained the staff, we sent them out onto the streets of London, Manchester, Birmingham, Liverpool and so on to interview rioters in our first phase. We aimed to interview a couple of hundred people, rather optimistically in my view, but managed to interview 270 in the end in a month. Analysed all the data, so these are long, open-ended, fully transcribed interviews of 45 minutes to an hour at least, and then published the findings in the Guardian newspaper over 6 days at the beginning of December 2011. So a period of about 16 or 17 weeks had elapsed in which the whole study was undertaken, done and published. We had a conference at the end of that period in December 2011 at which the leader of the opposition came and spoke, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and the Home Secretary, who came along and announced a review of police stop and search powers as a consequence, which was unexpected but rewarding. And then we went into a second phase of Reading the Riots, where we, having studied the rioters in phase one, then went on to study the police and the criminal justice system, but also the communities that were affected. So we interviewed police officers who were confronted with the violence in London and other cities. We interviewed the lawyers who had prosecuted the rioters and defended the rioters. And we interviewed people in the local communities most affected by the riots, people who had lost their businesses, their homes, their livelihoods, and people who were described in some quarters as vigilantes, people who'd come out onto the streets to protect their communities, feeling that they were insufficiently protected by the police or others, and then published that second phase in The Guardian in July 2012 over a period of 3 days. And to date, so mid-2013, that's the state of Reading the Riots. It's a very unusual research study done in partnership with a news organisation with no academic publications, no journal articles, no book. Everything is published via the newspaper. There were films, there were a whole series of articles, 20 or 30 pages in the paper, and they're all available on The Guardian's website. There will be a book in the future, probably called Reading the Riots, probably in 2014. But at this stage, what we have, I think, is a really unique study which tries to do social science in a different way, in a way that combines the rigour of academic life with the pace of movement, the speed, and the flexibility of journalism.